In a country wherein the freedom of expression and media plurality are key, it often becomes difficult to blur the lines between freedom of speech and licentiousness. And that's where the National Communication Council comes in order to regulate matters. Our guest on set is Joseph Chebonke Kalabopse. He's the president of the National Communication Council. He'll be discussing with us his role in eradicating media excesses and maintaining social cohesion in Cameroon. And in the course of this interview, we'll be joined live from Studio 2 by Avril and Nche to add more flesh to that topic. I'm Kingley Nche and you're watching the Grande Interview on PRC TV. Welcome to the presidency. Good day, Mr. Joseph.
The pleasure is shared. Good day.
Welcome to the presidency once again.
Thank you.
Now, you are the president of the National Communication Council in Cameroon, appointed in 2021 by the President of the Republic. A man who has showed by his actions that he's willing to promote freedom of speech, especially back in 1990 when he liberalized political parties and also gave the opportunity for media sectors to be enlarged. Now tell me, what concretely is the the National Communication Council,
NCC.
The NCC, thank you very much, doing to ensure that the freedom of expression or the freedom of speech is maintained?
Thank you for inviting me to talk about the National Communication Council. I would begin by saying that freedom of expression is a human right. And the government, particularly the President of the Republic, sometime in 1990, spoke to a French journalist, Yves Mourouzi, that he would like to be remembered as someone who brought democracy to Cameroon. And I think he concretized that with the 1990 laws, which in Cameroon we christened the liberty laws. And amongst the liberty laws was one creating the National Communication Council. And the council is there to oversee press freedom and also to check excesses in the press. And I would say that press freedom is an important ingredient in every democracy, because without the press, other democratic apparatus cannot express themselves. And so the test of democracy is in the vibrancy of the press. And through the press, people express themselves diversely, and you have different shades of opinions depending on the media organ and their leanings. Generally in journalism, we say press organs that are to the left, press organs that are to the right, and press organs that are in the center. And in Cameroon, you can find all of this. And that's why I think that the National Communication Council is there, first of all, to guarantee this, and then to check media excesses.
Now, you spoke about the president and one of his famous interviews wherein he was saying he wanted to be remembered as that person who brought democracy to Cameroon. There's another speech he made in the year 2015 that was during the visit of former French President François Hollande to Cameroon. And he said during that speech that, I'll quote him, "We reaffirm our mutual commitment to the freedom of expression, which is a reality in Cameroon, with the proliferation and vitality of newspapers. However, efforts will be made by the government and by journalists themselves to limit excesses."
Exactly.
Now, I would like us to talk a little bit about these journalists. Don't you have the impression that though the president shows himself as a person who is willing to promote democracy and the freedom of speech, he's rather having backlashes from them?
I don't think so. Part of it is that democratic, the utilization of the democratic wherewithal, where people can express themselves. But where it hurts is where they want to turn the freedom of expression into insult or denigrate authorities or institutions. That's where it hurts. And I think that each and every Cameroonian can say what he or she wants to say about the running of the country, the institutions of the country, the people of this country. But it is the manner in which you say it that can create a problem or can give you the credit for what you have said. So the manner in which you say determines that evaluation of the content of it. Now, you were talking about the media excesses. It's true that when you look through the media in Cameroon today, we have a plethora of media organs. The National Communication Council, just of recent, published the media map of Cameroon, in which they had a census of about 766 media organs. That is television, radio, newspapers, online publications, cable distributors. Those put together. Now, when you look at the content in our media today, you would find good content and you will find hateful content. The situation has been complicated with the advent of the social media.
Which we'll be talking about.
Certainly. Yeah. Because, and that's where the social responsibility of trained journalists comes in. Because they have a social responsibility towards the people that they serve and a moral obligation, which is not written, but which is embedded in their heads because they have been trained on how not only to collect, but to above all, treat information before they give it to the public. And when you talk about media excesses, that's where the National Communication Council feels that the journalist has a social responsibility to move away from what the untrained citizen who is excited because he has a smartphone shoots an event or an incident and puts at the disposal of the public.
Thank you, sir. Definitely we'll be talking in a few moments from now about the role of the social media and of course the big influence that this new media are creating in the society. You spoke a while ago about the proliferation of newspapers. We know there have been several laws, several legal frames in Cameroon, especially those of 2002 and 2018 that have given more room to all of these media outlets to be existing. But don't you have the impression, you've been at the council for close to 4 years now?
Yes.
Now, with your experience both as a journalist and president of the National Communication Council, that with more laws to liberalize the press comes rather more freedom, which is a little bit difficult to check.
No, I think that what is happening in the media world today is that some media organs will fizzle out because the government has given them the freedom to create. For your information, in the past, newspapers, for example, before you publish, had to go through a control, and where the administrative authorities found that an article was offensive, they asked the publisher to drop that article. And that's why in the past, you would see newspapers with blank spaces because that article has been censored. That is a thing of the past. Today, journalists are free to publish what they want to publish. But where there is a problem is how you publish what you want to publish. It shouldn't be take press freedom for anarchy. And that's why we feel at the level of the National Communication Council that journalists should try as much as possible to be responsible. And this responsibility goes with obligations. They have a right to publish, but they have an obligation also to safeguard a number of givens that holds the society together.
So if I get you very well, you're saying apart from the role of the National Communication Council to regulate matters, it behoves them to check upon themselves.
That is what I would call peer review and self-control. But the council is there to watch and see that we don't have excesses. That's why the name itself in French is conseil, which means you can counsel somebody. And that's why when the current administration was appointed by the President of the Republic, during my installation I said, we will educate, sensitize, but also sanction. Because we draw the attention of media practitioners to errors which they make, because to err is human. We send them warning letters, we send them cautions, and then we also summon them to the council to answer to charges which have been noticed in reports or in programs in their media organs. And that's the role of the National Communication Council, to ensure that we have a vibrant but responsible press, because the press is the window of every given society or country. If you want to know what's happening in Cameroon and how Cameroonians think, you read their papers, watch their televisions, listen to their radios, you'll be able to have a perception of the type of people you're meeting. And that's why at the level of the Communication Council, I have not stopped drawing the attention to the fact that they must be able to work in such a way that will give Cameroon the image it deserves at the level of the world stage. You need to move out of this country and talk about Cameroon and see how people appreciate us. And so why would our press not give us that image? There might be things left and right that are not normal, but globally speaking, we are a rich people in every dimension of the word. And the rest of the world admires us immensely. I have had the privilege of visiting the 5 continents of this world, and I'm talking from my own experience, not only as a journalist, but as somebody, a moral authority as well.
We'll have opportunities to talk more about that. But before then, we'll be bringing in Sabrina Nche live from Studio 2. She'll be talking more explicitly with you about media excesses and effectively rolling out those excesses by the council. Hello, Sabrina.
Hello, Kingley. It's nice joining you on the program.
Thank you for being with us.
Mr. Joe Chebonkeng, it's nice having you on set as well.
Nice to have you, Sabrina.
At what moment or at what point does the National Communication Council strike a balance between one's freedom to express his or herself and the abuse of that same freedom?
Let me say that at the level of the council, what we do is not sanctioned systematically. Mm-hmm. As professionals, we know that a journalist is responsible for what he or she churns out in the media institution in which he or she is working. And so the council members, as professionals, will listen to reports, to discuss, and we watch. And so as professionals, we can know, because the language which you use, which journalists use, is the toll that carries the information that gets to the public. And so we can be able to determine whether this is offensive language or not, whether this is incriminating language or not. And that's where the National Communication Council makes a difference between what is supposed to be and what is not supposed to be. So, Sabrina, put in another way, council members are professionals who know exactly what is supposed to be done in the media, in a report, in an analysis, in a commentary, or an editorial. And so when we listen, watch, or read, we can be able to make the distinction between what is supposed to be correct or not.
Okay, so Mr. Joe Chebonkeng, you are an observer and a watchdog of the media landscape. And we observe that there is a rise in hate speech, fake news, misinformation. So just beyond just sanctioning perpetrators or media organs that cross the lines, what do you think can be done to remedy or curb this problem? And I heard you telling Kingsley a while ago that social media isn't helping things at all.
Let me say that the social media has come to stay, and there is no way we can run away from that. What we need to do is to adapt to it. And that's where I usually tell my younger colleagues, those publishing, those to adapt to the new realities. Because if you want to leave or stay with the traditional newspaper, radio or television, it will be difficult for you to get the normal remunerations which you would normally have had. So, but you go to the social media and publish there and meet the audience there and advertise there. And so, to come back to your preoccupation, I think that what the social media is doing, or the usage of the social media rather, is what is creating problems and not the social media itself. And so the council has increasingly been drawing the attention of professionals that meet the people where they are going to. That is, publish online, so that those who are excited or and don't have time to watch television, listen to the radio, or read newspapers, the traditional ones, can get those papers online. That's the first thing we are encouraging, and thank God many media organs are now going onto the platforms and publishing there. The second thing we're doing is trying to educate the public to be discriminatory in the choice of things which they watch on the social media. And we're using other civil society organizations and reaching out in workshops and seminars. Because if they are not discriminatory, most of what they would collect from the social media or find in the social media, they would consume it as gospel truth. But if they are discriminatory, they will be able to make a choice. And they will have a critical eye or critical ear when they're watching something on the social media. And there they can be able to form their own opinions to be able to say, no, what I'm reading, what I'm watching, or what I'm listening to on the social media, there's something which is not correct. And the National Communication Council has also been working with other media organizations, reaching out to them. We organized what we call at the National Communication Council as the NCC Coffee Talks, where we brought together stakeholders and with experts and educated them on issues that have to do with online publications, hate speech, misinformation, disinformation, remedies, and all whatnot. And we are working with cyber journalists and bloggers as well, including influencers, so that they can be credible sources, since they are there where the youths are going. And I must say that as of today, I think Cameroon has crossed the 50% mark of smartphone owners. About a year ago, we were at 45, and the figure is changing very fast. So about 50% of Cameroonians today have smartphones, which means the traditional media organs have to go with the public where they are going to, that is online, and try to adapt to the realities of today's world, where the people would want to watch short videos, listen to short reports, watch or read just headlines, and so on and so forth, popping up on their smartphones every now and then to be informed. The world is changing fast, and so we also have to change with the changing world, and especially the media organs.
Okay, we wish you good luck and more power to your elbows for the challenges ahead. Thanks very much for your responses. I'll take leave of you two. It was nice being with you.
It was nice having you too, Sabrina.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Before we come back, we'll take a short break, and we'll be back to discuss more about the presidential elections, the role of the National Communication Council, and the work that has been done so far by Joseph Chebonke and Kalabopsi ever since he took over that office. Dear viewers, thank you for being with us. You are watching the Grande Interview on PRC TV. You're welcome to the presidency. We're receiving today Joseph Chebonke and Kalabopsi. He's the president of the National Communication Council. Joseph Chebonke and Kalabopsi, you spoke with...
You can call me Joe.
Joe, I can call you Joe. Yeah. Okay. The name we knew you by when we were still kids watching you on CRTV. So Joe, you spoke with Sabrina about hate speech. But I would like you to define hate speech by your institution. How does the National Communication Council define what hate speech?
The National Communication Council does not have an autonomous definition of hate speech. We draw from international organizations like UNESCO, and we apply to our context. We've had several workshops organized by international institutions, and I must say that this idea of hate speech is not only limited to Cameroon. It cuts across, and it's affecting the world as a whole. The definition, simply put, hate speech is offensive language which is intended to hurt either a community, a people, a society, a tribe, based on prejudices like religion, tribal influence, political leaning, and what have you. So, simply put, that's the definition of hate speech.
Now, tribal speeches based on political leanings, and what could be the impact of such hate speech, perhaps on a community, on the society, on the country at large?
The first thing is when a society feels hurt by hate speech, they recoil and don't feel part and parcel of the whole. The second thing is it creates disunity. We're today preaching living together and building a nation. Why would you hate somebody based on his religious leaning, the area from where he comes, his political leaning, just because you don't share those values with him or her? So the consequence is that we have a broken society we have a society in which people don't smile at each other, but frown at each other. We don't see each other as brothers and sisters sharing the same nationality, but we see people as either coming from this tribe or this religious community or this region or this, and so on and so forth. And that is not healthy for our democracy and the building of our nation. So this, when hate speech is rampant in any given community, it creates disunity and makes people recoil and make people don't feel part and parcel of the mainstream of that community, be it a region, a tribe, a family, or even a nation.
Now, just in the course of this ongoing year, 2025, we've had a couple of media personalities in certain media outlets being sanctioned or called out by your institution, especially when it came to the political domain. And usually, after you call out people, if they don't heed to your calls, you sanction. And when we talk to many Cameroonians about the National Communication Council, the first thing they have in mind is an institution that's out to sanction either media practitioners or media owners. On what basis do you exactly met out sanctions? How often do you need to call out people, warn them before you strike?
Every Cameroonian or everybody has a right to his or her opinion about, not only about the National Communication Council, but on every issue. And you don't expect to sanction people or a journalist or a press organ and be praised for doing that. And so we are conscious of that. But we don't sanction people because we want to sanction them. We sanction people because they have committed a professional fault or professional error. And the council does not sanction systematically. Those of them who are true to themselves will tell you, especially journalists, that the council has vindicated many people who were summoned to the council for having written offensive articles or said offensive issues concerning individuals or institutions. When the council examines the report or the excerpt of the incriminating story and finds out that it was done professionally, the council vindicates the journalists. And we have done that severally. But our role is not to put it at the level of the public to say we want to buy ourselves because, see, this journalist was supposed to be sanctioned. We did not sanction him. No, that's not our role. We play our role as the media watchdog of the country. We play our role as the regulator of the country. And we do not wait for individuals to complain to the council about issues that are offensive to either institutions or individuals. Sometimes we do self-referrals. In other words, we pick up issues and deal with them without waiting for people to complain about the issues which we find offensive. That's the role of the National Communication Council. And like I said, people have their opinions about what we do, but our role is not to please the public, but to do what the law wants us to do. And if we sanction and it doesn't please people, it's just but normal. You can't give a child a Nivaqueen, which is bitter, and you expect the child to drink that Nivaqueen and be smiling. But when the child is healed of that malaria disease, if the child is responsible enough to say, Papa, thank you. If we sanctioned the media, it's not because we want to destroy freedom of the press. It's because we want to rid the media of quacks, people who are misusing their microphones and their pens. The microphones and pens we have can be offensive instruments if we don't use them well. And that's why the National Communication Council, when it gets to a certain situation, is forced to sanction. And we don't pity when we want to sanction.
Now, perhaps, Joe, I believe the public view that many people have of you is due to the lack of knowledge concerning your modus operandi, how you go about your job. Perhaps journalists who are used to the institution know how you go about your job, but young guys in training schools, undergoing journalism classes, the normal Cameroonian doesn't know how the National Communication Council goes about. Perhaps you could give us more details. How often do you need to warn someone? Do you warn at all? Do you strike immediately? Is there an observatory procedure you follow internally? Perhaps you should give us more details on that.
Yes, we have a manual which we follow in terms of sanctions. And it depends on the offense in question. If we find out that the offense is serious, we summon you to the council, and if you cannot defend yourself appropriately, professionally, we sanction you. Okay. And what we do in lighter offenses is we can give the publisher a telephone call to say, hey, please call this guy to order, this is what we watched or we saw. It doesn't look good. Sometimes we write warning letters, and then we quote exactly why we are warning you for. And sometimes we summon you to the council and counsel you and let you go. Sometimes we call to congratulate some individual on reports that have been well done.
Well, that's great. I never heard about that before.
Yes, we do that, but we don't. Our role is not to put it at the level of the public to be showing that this is what we are doing. No. We are a silent but purposeful institution put in place by the state to regulate the media. And if you notice, of late, you see there's an improvement in the attitude of journalists. There's a growing consciousness about the presence and the role of the National Communication Council. And so with that, we feel that the press is becoming conscious that they have to sit up. And if you went through a school of journalism, we are taught on how to cover every event. I usually put it this way, that journalists can walk on broken bottles without being hurt. And so when we are talking, we're not talking to people on the streets. We're talking to people who have been trained. Or we have the impression that they have been trained because they are called journalists. If you have not, then don't pick your pen or sit behind a microphone because you are a potential risk. The excitement of sitting behind a microphone can let you to say something which you will not be able to call back when it's already gone. And the impact of it can be disastrous. And that's why we urge, particularly those who are in community radios, because many of them haven't received any formal training. As we approach these elections, they must have to stay clear of politics because that's not their vocation in community radios. Number two, if you are excited about the profession of journalism and you want to have on-the-job training, have a good mentor to help you to become one.
Now, Joe, what kind of offensive do you notice the most in the exercise of your job? We know commonly what comes up in journalism cases are defamatory. Are there different forms of, should I say, violations of the law that you've noticed so far?
Yes, generally what we've noticed is that some journalists are at the beck and call of either strongmen, politically or financially.
Okay.
And so they are paid to denigrate others. And in such situations, you would easily notice, or a journalist who goes to someone and tries to lobby for funds. And when he or she doesn't have, he starts attacking that individual on the media with the hope that such outings will force the individual to call him and say, okay, no, take, and give him something. We have noticed that increasingly.
Green envelope journalism, I believe they call it.
Well, in those days we used to say Hilton journalists and so on and so forth, but I don't know what you call them today. But these are some of the things which we have noticed. And also the fact that many of our younger journalists are losing professional ethics. Many are not being, they don't caution themselves ethically when they are going out or when they are doing outings on the media institutions. First, you know, a journalist is supposed to be a role model in many aspects. The way you dress, the way you speak, the way you receive people, the way you articulate, the way you handle issues. Because the journalist is a teacher who speaks to a wider world other than that of the traditional teacher who teaches in a four-world, that is, within a classroom. And so the journalist is supposed to research and be knowledgeable himself because he has to share knowledge. So you have to read widely, equip yourself. Even in interviewing somebody, you have to know much about the person you are interviewing and the institutions that he incarnates for you to carry out a good interview. Because he can say something which is not correct and you would not be able to rectify it because you don't know yourself. And so we usually say that journalists are masters of all, but they are jacks of all.
Jacks of all, but masters of none.
Masters of none, because they have been trained on how to suck out the best from every specialist. And so he or she would become knowledgeable because he or she knows how to get the best from specialists.
Now, how would you judge the potency of your sanction on journalists? In the past, in Cameroon, we've witnessed journalists sanctioned by the National Communication Council, supposedly deprived from on-air time, and yet we saw them on TV, we heard them on radio stations. Are things changing, and are the sanctions of the council really potent on journalists?
I would say yes. I'm pleased to say that for some time now, every sanction we have meted out has been respected. And there is an increasing awareness of the role of journalists. And I want to seize this opportunity to salute SEMPA, that is the Association of Newspaper Publishers, who 1 or 2 months back issued a statement on hate speech in the country. That's what I call a peer review mechanism coming from the print media. And so I would say that this is the growing consciousness of professionalism within the media landscape in Cameroon. And the National Communication Council is not alone. We might be the institution conferred with the responsibility of overseeing media regulation, but we are glad to say professional groupings are also aware. They are checking their peers, and also journalists are also contributing in that awareness, because you would hear on set today that someone say, or a moderator say that, please, what you're saying is not correct, is hateful. Can you withdraw that statement? When you see a journalist say that, you know that the journalist is conscious of the fact that there are things that can be said on the media which will cause problems than tear us apart instead of building us.
Now, still talking about sanctions, do you think, of course, we appreciate the progress that's been made so far, like you've just explained, but do you think the sanctions would be more powerful if perhaps the National Communication Council had financial power to implement them? I mean, like, you get what I'm saying?
Yes. Let me say this. Not financial powers, but the legal framework. Because now I must also express my gratitude to the other administrative arms of government that help us in the execution of the sanctions which we met out. And I think that if the council was autonomous in trying to enforce its own decisions, that will be much more better. It's been done in other countries. Even in Europe, the regulators sanction media organs. And so it's not something limited to Cameroon or to Africa. We have regulatory organs, and this thing started far back in North America. And today, we are noticing that it is an important institution that has to be, because in every situation, you would have people who would like to dance on one leg and not on two legs, even though they have the two legs. And so you need somebody to call them to order that here we don't dance on one leg, we dance on both legs.
While leaving this part of the sanctions, there's something I'd like us to briefly talk about. You spoke about the reason for which we've had in the past so many media excesses due to the fact that most or many people who call themselves journalists lack the professional training. But in Cameroon, we're used to a system wherein someone who's not been through a journalism school can go through an informal training, they call it in French, formation sur le tas, and after some time...
On-the-job training.
On-the-job training, get used to, I mean, be called a journalist. We've had cases in Cameroon where people have equally obtained the press card without necessarily going through a journalism school. The National Communication Council, how does it view that?
First of all, it's the responsibility of the Association of Journalists or syndicate to be able to call whoever is issuing a press card to someone who is not a journalist to order. Secondly, the responsibility is to that organ that has been given the responsibility of issuing press card to ensure that what they are doing is correct. Thirdly, what we've noticed is that in the past, we had one school of journalism, the Advanced School of Mass Communication. And so it used to churn out majority of the journalists that we had in the country. And so you could determine that all are coming out from the same mold and would have the same characteristics. But today, we have several universities and other institutions training journalists. And so it's difficult. That's why even when we talk about the standards dropping, you also have to mitigate that assessment, because all of us in the profession today don't come from the same mold.
Definitely.
Secondly, there are people who are adventurous. They went into journalism because they were looking for jobs, or they wanted some heroic stardom and all whatnot. And so I think that journalists themselves are primarily responsible. They have to have a strong syndicate to be able to say who is a journalist and who is not. And that the Press Card Commission is supposed to sit up also to ensure that they give out the cards only to people who are real journalists. There are people who are passing for journalists today, and when you ask them a little basic notion about the profession, they ramble about, which means they have no idea of what the ethics and deontology of the profession are. And so I think that any media proprietor that employs someone based on his outlook, physical appearance, voice, ability to write, as a journalist, you take the responsibilities for the mistakes that will follow your choice of that employee. Again, the law says that if you want to start a media organ, you must recruit at least 2 to 3 journalists before you get other assistants and all whatnot. So the responsibility is not only with the journalists themselves, but with media owners. Yes, because sometimes some of them are business people, but they don't know the impact or the implications of the business they are going into.
But do the sanctions you made out on journalists affect their bosses?
Of course, of course. Most often we send warning letters. We've had the opportunity of suspending a media proprietor, or 2, 3, more even, because of the gravity of the offense that was created by a journalist in the structure which he has, or the institution which he has. So, but they take responsibility for most of the errors committed, because if you're publishing a story and you take the responsibility for what you're publishing, that's what the law says.
Now, talking about the press card, I read in your roles, in the missions of the National Communication Council, that you have a duty vis-a-vis the National Press Card Commission, especially concerning the issuance and the withdrawal of a press card. The National Communication Council has to be consulted, and its approval or its advice given before such a decision is made. Is it feasible?
It is feasible, but it's not being done. Because for some time now, I haven't heard that press card commission has met. That's the responsibility of the Press Card Commission and what they are supposed to do to be able to get the National Communication Council involved. And if they don't do it, it's a lapse on their part.
Since you came to office, have you made proposals that have been taken into consideration and that have been successful?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Perhaps.
we've done that. But I'm not here to enumerate.
Okay.
Yes. Every year, the responsibility of the council is to give a report of its activities and then advise government on a number of issues that have to do with social communication and we do that systematically. And there are many things which the council has drawn government's attention to, and government has been able to apply them or act on the advice of the council. And the role of the council is to advise government. So we do just what we're supposed to do, and government picks the relay from the advice we've given them.
Thank you, Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a short break. We'll be coming back for the last segment of this program, talking about the presidential elections in Cameroon and the role of the National Communication Council in making sure that everything goes hitch-free. Just stay tuned with us. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us. Thank you once again, Joe, for being with us for this Grande Interview.
Thank you.
Now we are talking about the last phase of this interview, the elections. It's a crucial year. We said it from the beginning. Cameroon will be going to the polls come October this year. And already we've noticed that there's a lot of commotion on air. We've seen politicians coming out. We've seen journalists perhaps missing their steps. And we've equally seen a communique written by the National Communication Council just a few days ago, addressed to a political party on an affair of seemingly defamation, as he called it. And you mentioned in that communique that you were going to have another sitting with your members before seeing how you can handle that. I'd just like you to tell us, during this crucial year, with all that is going on air, how's the National Communication Council handling the pressure?
Let me say that the council is very conscious of the challenges ahead, and we are prepared for it. Everyone knows that the elections will be fought on the media, and especially the social media. And we have taken the disposition to confront the challenges and to see how best we can play down on excesses and advise media professionals to be more responsible in their outings and in their choice of programs and personalities that they have on set. But above all, to also educate Cameroonians through the media on selective perception of messages that come. They are not like little chicks that will just gob down everything that comes from the media. So they need to be discriminatory as well in their choice of pronouncements, and coming from politicians who might be building bridges on level land and all whatnot. That would certainly raise their awareness of the fact that this information or that information needs to be checked. And for your information, we are coming up, within the next couple of weeks, we'll be coming up with a fact-checking unit at the level of the National Communication Council that will be working 24 hours, round the clock, to be able to bring down and push up correct information on issues that have to do with our country.
I believe there's going to be, with that information coming up, a more tight collaboration with Antique.
We are already working with Antique, and that is in collaboration with them and with other civil society organizations as well. And then we will extend the training to other cities and to other institutions as well. But Antique has developed a software which will be there at Antique. But the artistic team will be at the level of the National Communication Council. We are also working with TikTok and Meta to try to play down on excesses. And I think that the council is looking forward to the elections with a lot of excitement, because the council knows that the media will play a key role, but we want that key role to be a responsible key role.
Now, you spoke about training journalists as well. We know during every electoral year, a booklet is being published by or distributed to journalists.
Yes.
We call it the Handbook for Journalists During Elections.
Exactly.
So far, the handbook is doing that which it was written for?
Yes. We intend to begin within the next couple of days. You would get from the media where the council is going to and what the council is doing. And then when the time comes, we will give them that handbook on what is expected of journalists during, before, during, and after the elections. And we also want to get journalists, equip them, because many of them are professionals. So we just need to reawaken some of the professional ethics in them on what we have observed as limitations, so that they can be up to the task. And so we will not be training them again to be journalists, but just doing some refresher courses or workshops on things that we've noticed at the level of the media, which we feel that are offensive, or if not well handled, could push the journalists into problems, or the other way. So that's what the council intends to do. And also we want to go to, we will be in some of our big towns and regions, all of the regions, but some of our big towns like Kongsamba. You know, Kongsamba, or the Mongo, to be more precise, is peculiar. The Mongo has 13 subdivisions. And so we will be there shortly. And almost every subdivision has a community radio. And community radios were given, they have a specific roadmap, but we have noticed that they have moved away from that original roadmap into becoming commercial radios. And again, most local government authorities are using their community radios as propaganda tools. That's not within the roadmap of community radios. And so we noticed a problem also with community radios, in the sense that many of them broadcast in our local languages. And it's difficult to translate some of the concepts from French into our local languages, or from English to our local languages. So it has created a lot of problems. And during electoral campaigns, most opponents fight their battles on these commercial radios, which is not the role of the commercial radio, community radios. So we will reach out to them, educate them, build up their capacity, and help them to perform better this time around.
Okay, Joe, last question. This is just an impression from you. You are a former student of the Advanced School of Mass Communication. I believe you graduated in the year 1989, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
You're a former journalist at the Cameroon Radio Television. You started as a sport journalist before moving to other things, and of course presenting the news as well. Used to watch you when I was a kid. Now, your impression, do you have the impression as a former journalist, now turned president of the National Communication Council, that journalism is on the decline or rising in Cameroon?
That's a difficult question to answer, but it depends on the person and the program you're assessing. And the realities of today are not the realities of our day. When we started the profession, you are confronted with many more challenges now than we were in the past. And so if I were to give an assessment, it would be difficult to be exact. But there are instances where, as a journalist myself, because a journalist never resigns from the profession, I question the professionalism of some of our youngsters. And there are instances where I praise some of their inputs. And so it will be difficult to give a global assessment since we haven't carried out any research. But one thing which we've noticed with the youngsters of today is that they are so money hungry and so position hungry that they would want to break everything along their lines to grab the money or to grab professions, post, and which wasn't the situation in our days.
Back in your days.
Yes, so to answer your question, it is difficult to assess or to give a percentage or to say it's rising or it's dropping. But the truth is that we need to have a credible press, and that credible press can only be animated by credible journalists themselves. So if we want to have a press that is representative of our country, then the journalists themselves must be credible and must be professional in everything they do.
Thank you very much, Joseph Chebonke Kalabopsi, for being our guest on this program, The Grande Interview.
The pleasure has been mine.
We wish you a nice day as you go back to your office and your work.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was it for this other segment of The Grande Interview, and of course for this edition of The Grande Interview. We're glad to know you were watching us. Just stay tuned to PRC TV. We'll be coming up with other programs and interesting things as well. See you next time on The Grande Interview. Have a nice day. Bye.